You have high blood pressure, so what foods should you avoid? That question sounds so familiar, it almost feels like plain common sense. But after decades as a health researcher, tracking thousands of people through large-scale studies and long-term observations, I've come to see that the usual advice about steering clear of specific foods isn't nearly as straightforward or helpful as most of us have been led to believe. The truth is, clinging to those popular forbidden food lists, salt, canned and processed items, red meat, coffee and alcohol, often creates an illusion of control while quietly setting your body up for reactions you never saw coming. Have you ever cut salt drastically, only to watch your numbers stay stuck or even jump higher? Or wondered why some folks eat salty food their whole lives with steady readings, while your careful restrictions leave you exhausted and your blood pressure bouncing around like it has a mind of its own? It's not random. The idea that avoidance is always the answer can actually hide a tougher reality. Sometimes avoiding isn't the fix, and in certain cases, it becomes part of the problem. Picture this. You're sitting there with a printed list from your doctor or a popular health site, crossing off items one by one. No salt, no fried stuff, no caffeine. You think you're protecting your arteries and lightening the load on your heart. But what I've seen in case after case is that this kind of strict avoidance can open up gaps. Your body tries to fill in surprising ways. Blood pressure doesn't always drop because you're dodging something. Sometimes it holds steady, or climbs because you've missed the subtle signals your body was sending all along. Take sodium, the top villain on every list. It's not some lone enemy. It's part of a delicate electrolyte balance. Cut it too aggressively, and your body can activate backup systems, like ramping up the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone pathway, RAAS, to hold on to fluid and tighten vessels as compensation. The massive PURE study, which followed more than 100,000 adults across 17 countries, showed a clear J-shaped curve. Both very high sodium, over 7 grams a day, and very low levels, under 3 grams, were linked to higher risks of heart events and death compared with a moderate sweet spot around 3 to 6 grams. That means the cut-it-to-the-bone advice many people follow can sometimes backfire, especially if you're not particularly salt-sensitive to begin with. And coffee? You ditch the caffeine thinking you're sparing your blood vessels from any squeeze. Yet long-term data from large cohorts show that most people develop tolerance quickly. The temporary bump you see in lab tests fades after a few weeks, and moderate coffee drinkers often show no lasting rise or even slight benefits from the antioxidants. Quit cold turkey, and you might trade one issue for fatigue, afternoon slumps, or extra stress that pushes cortisol up and affects your readings in a whole new way. Alcohol follows its own twisty path. Older studies painted a J-curve where light drinking, 1 or 2 units a day, seemed linked to lower heart risks than total abstinence. Newer, better-controlled research from big databases like UK Biobank flips that script, showing risks climb even at low levels, especially if you already have high blood pressure. Still, for some people, complete avoidance removes a small social or relaxation ritual that helped dial down daily tension, replacing it with its own form of stress that indirectly keeps numbers higher. Red meat and processed foods get the same treatment. Processed versions, think deli meats, sausages, canned goods, are consistently tied to higher blood pressure because of hidden sodium, nitrates, and preservatives. But fresh, unprocessed red meat? When paired with plenty of vegetables and fiber, many long-term studies don't show the clear harm people expect, especially if you're getting enough potassium and magnesium. Cut it out entirely, though, and some folks end up short on high-quality protein, losing muscle strength that actually helps regulate blood pressure through movement and hormones. The bigger pattern I've observed is that people often treat these rules like a rigid checklist, ignoring how everything interacts. Your genes, your overall diet, your daily stress, even your gut microbiome. You avoid sodium, but accidentally skimp on potassium-rich fresh produce because you're so focused on safety. You drop red meat but load up on refined carbs instead, quietly feeding low-grade inflammation. The result? More fatigue, more blood pressure swings, and that frustrating feeling of, I'm doing everything right. Why isn't it working? Digging deeper into the biology, you start to see why. When sodium drops too low, RAAS kicks in hard, constricting vessels and holding fluid. Potassium and magnesium, on the other hand, help keep blood vessels relaxed by supporting nitric oxide production and proper muscle function. Caffeine's acute effects fade with tolerance, but abrupt avoidance can disrupt your natural adenosine rhythm and spike morning cortisol. Alcohol and red meat influence the gut microbiome in ways that affect inflammation, and short-chain fatty acids that help regulate pressure. None of these foods act in isolation. They're part of a dynamic, living network. From an evolutionary angle, it makes even more sense. Our bodies were shaped over hundreds of thousands of years in environments where salt was scarce. Caffeine-like compounds came from wild plants to sharpen alertness. Small amounts of fermented drinks offered calories and hydration safety, and fresh meat delivered nutrients our brains and muscles needed. Today's world of ultra-processed food, constant light, sedentary jobs, and chronic stress creates a mismatch. Strict modern avoidance lists sometimes fight against systems that evolved for feast or famine cycles and natural rhythms. And here's where the research itself gets fascinating. Short-term trials often show big drops from cutting sodium hard, while huge long-term cohorts like Pure reveal that ultra-low levels can carry their own risks. Lab tests catch caffeine's quick spike, but real-world data show tolerance wipes it out. Old alcohol studies suggested a protective sweet spot. Newer genetic analyses say even light drinking raises risk. Processed meat clearly harms. Fresh red meat in context often doesn't. The data seem to contradict each other until you realize the body isn't a simple machine responding to single items. It's a living, adapting system trying to maintain balance. After looking at all of this, the everyday frustrations, the biology, the evolutionary roots, and the conflicting studies, I've reached a conclusion that surprises a lot of people. Avoiding certain foods when you have high blood pressure is still important, actually more important than ever. But not in the way you might think. Not as a harsh, all-or-nothing blacklist that leaves you drained and discouraged. Instead, it works best as a smarter, more personalized approach I call avoidance in sync. That means focusing on hidden sodium in ultra-processed junk rather than fearing every grain of natural salt, especially when it comes paired with potassium-packed vegetables that keep the balance right. It means enjoying coffee in the morning if your body handles it well, but skipping big doses at night to protect your overnight blood pressure dip. It means steering clear of heavy industrial alcohol while recognizing that a small, mindful glass in a relaxing social setting might support stress reduction for some without the downsides. It means skipping processed meats loaded with additives, but embracing quality fresh proteins when they're part of a plate full of fiber and produce that keeps your microbiome happy and inflammation low. The secret is turning avoidance from a battle into a conversation with your own body. Track how you actually feel. Monitor your blood pressure at home. Maybe even check your personal sodium excretion or how you respond after meals. Pay attention to your genetics, your daily rhythm, your activity level. Balance every choice with movement, good sleep, and stress management, so you're working with your ancient biology instead of against today's environment. What I've seen in my research is that when people make this shift, From rigid rules to thoughtful, individualized harmony, real, lasting improvements follow. Blood pressure stabilizes, not because they followed a perfect checklist, but because they started listening to the whole dynamic system. High blood pressure stops feeling like a list of enemies to fight and becomes a signal to pay attention to how you live, eat, and move in the world you actually inhabit. That's the perspective I've come to after years of digging into the numbers and watching real lives unfold. It doesn't throw out standard guidance. It elevates it into something far more powerful and sustainable. And once you see the full picture, the whole conversation about food and blood pressure becomes a lot more interesting, because you're no longer just avoiding. You're finally working with the incredible adaptive body you've got.